is the executive producer of Luru magazine, an independent print magazine chronicling foreign correspondent and author whose 8 books span China, Europe, and beyond. Her debut, Smoke and Mirrors, won the Crossword Vodafone Prize for Nonfiction. A big round of applause for the panel.
Welcome to this session, a tale of 2 magazines, Equator and Luru. Both of them are essentially turning to words, to on-the-ground granular reportage as a way of providing insights and connections between the reader and the world that the reader today inhabits at a time and in a world which seems to be turning journalists in Inner Mongolia. There was also an excellent piece on Ukraine and the actual cost of war on Ukraine and the idea that a bad peace is worse than no peace, as opposed to a kind of particular Western perspective that often masquerades as universal.
Yeah, I think that's right. So Equator launched October 29th, so it's barely 6 weeks old. And we publish 1 or 2 pieces, long pieces every week. And the idea has been fermenting in some of our heads for a few years. All of us behind the magazine have worked or written for some of the big American and British legacy publications. And I think a couple of things have happened in the last 2 years. One is that I think the calculus, is China a counterweight to the US in terms of economic or military superiority? I mean, these are not questions that interest us that much. They interest the West, they don't interest us. The second is, I think, to kind of really put forward a very sharp critique of the West itself and its own policies, which these publications don't seem to be able to do.
In some ways is at the opposite end, like we said, to some place like Equator, in that it's a deep dive really into place. It has an insistence on being rooted. And this is perhaps being lost in a world in which through digital networks, we are all like everywhere but nowhere at the same time. So tell us the thought behind the evolution of the magazine.
Yeah, absolutely. So Luru started this year as well in February 2025. And much like in a response to the overall globalism, we felt that there was a lot of space for us to explore this question of identity at a hyper-local level. So what does it mean to be Bangalorean, and how do you approach that question, particularly if you're some in Bangalore for years upon years or decades to consider yourself a Bangalorean. So we felt, okay, in the media that this is very thinly represented.
This is only my 2nd or 3rd time ever in the city. I'm curious about that question. Who is a Bangalorean? And how is a Bangalorean different from a Mangalorean or a Mumbaiker or anybody like that? What do you think makes a Bangalorean?
And the reality is that it's very plural. So it very much is a function of which decade did you move to Bangalore in. So the 70s Bangalore is different from the 90s. It's different from the 2010s, and it's very different from what Bangalore is today. And so you actually kind of have a little bit of this kitschy of
distraction and this inability to focus. And focus is really the new luxury in many ways. But when you're looking at younger people, and you mentioned that you'll be focusing a lot on 25, some kind of content. And suddenly we have 2 magazines which are, long form and crafted and trying to look at issues in a more complex manner. Who is the readership for this? Do people really want this? Are you sort of appealing, you're talking about reaching out to young people, but I would imagine that it would be old fogies like me that might be your readership persona. How is Gen Z or younger people in general going to react to this idea of slow journalism and complexity, given the fact that it's very much counter to the currents that we see in the world today? Samanth, maybe you could start.
Sure. Look, I mean, coming to a place like BLF always gives writers hope, because there's so many of you sitting on chairs listening to people whinge on about books and the lack of...
I find that quite
fascinating. So we get a real sense of like how warped the world has become, right? I mean, like...
What's going on?
So it's coming back a full circle, right? And so we felt like the time was right then. But at the same time, because it's uphill, one of the things with Luru we were very keen on healing. And then the second, and my co-founder is sitting here, Gaurav. He's a very talented filmmaker. So
Session. Thank you to our wonderful audience, and more power to Equator and Luru. Thank you.
thank you.